All right, here we go. This is part number two in the Run Club video series, Resistance Training for Runners. Today is the meat and potatoes. We're talking about resistance training. We're going to cover 5 different exercises or types of exercises that will actually give you a total body workout. All these exercises are not necessarily specifically designed for runners, but they all have benefits for people that run. So let's see, right off the bat, let's talk about why we want to do resistance training. Because for a long time, most runners did not pick up weights at all. They just figured, if I want to be a better runner, I just need to run more. Of course, the research has shown that that's absolutely not true. And resistance training is essential not only for injury prevention, but it also actually has other benefits as well that we'll get into. Let's talk about injury prevention first, namely the muscles that stabilize your joints. Without resistance training, you don't build up strength in that muscle there. And once you have strength in those muscles, you build up strength in that joint capsule itself, and it's able to endure a lot more abuse than if the assistance muscles were not trained. So that's number one, is just joint stability. Number two is the more lean muscle mass you have, the more amount of glycogen your body can store. Glycogen is fuel that you use for running. This is your carbohydrates. So basically, you're creating a larger gas tank so that you can run further, faster, and longer. That's pretty much it. You can run faster for longer. Additionally, what we touched on last webinar, we talked about power off the ground, how you can maximize muscle power, but minimize muscle contraction. So you're creating more force using less muscular contraction, therefore you're using less oxygen. So again, you can move further faster using less oxygen, etc. So you won't get tired as quickly. So these are all benefits wrapped up just into strength training itself. Some of the other things with strength training, a lot of runners train with too light of a weight. Your running is your endurance training. So you don't need to train for endurance in the weight room as well. Now, of course, you don't be needing to do 1 rep maxes all the time, but you should be lifting relatively heavy weights. If you're in there doing bench press and you're doing 12, 15 reps each set, it's way too light. You honestly need to be down in about the 5 to 8 rep range. So pretty heavy weights. You're not powerlifting, but definitely heavy weights to challenge the muscles. They're more than already adapted to endurance training. You need to focus on the strength when you're in the weight room. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and kick it off. We're going to cover what's normally considered the 5 foundational functional movement patterns. We're going to do a pushing movement, a pulling movement, then we're going to go into a lunge or squat, followed by a hinge, and finished up with a rotation. And also I'm going to throw in an anti-rotation as well. But that's it. Again, as a runner, if you're 2 days in the weight room, 2 days a week in the weight room, that's pretty much all you need. You don't need to spend a lot of time. But these 5 exercises, you can put this together and do this exact workout or a variation of this workout twice a week. And that should be good for, at least initially, for your strength training. So let's get started with the pushing movement. First and foremost, everybody's familiar with a push-up, I imagine by now. However, they can be difficult to do. So this is something that you can start out doing possibly on your knees until you work up to a full push-up. But there's nothing fancy about this. Make sure when you are doing a push-up, as you lower down, your elbows stay close to the body. So I'll show you from the front. The one thing you never want to see in a push-up is the elbows flaring out to the side. It's very dangerous on your shoulders. You could actually end up with shoulder tears. It's very common. Rotator cuff problem for the supraspinatus, one of the rotator cuff muscles. Those flared shoulders put a lot of tension on that. So keep the shoulders, or the elbows, I'm sorry, in close to the body when you're doing a push-up. Next movement from there that you can do, you don't have a bench, because of course you can bench press, and I'll get to that one. It's called a floor press. You can just lie on the floor, take a weight. The nice thing about this is you don't have to worry about going down too far because the floor will stop momentum. From this position, you just press up. Again, if you have a heavy enough dumbbell, this can be very challenging. So that's called floor press. And then finally, if you do have a bench, same exact thing, except now you're lying on a bench. And I do recommend you always do single arm when you're doing bench press. You can get a barbell and do it that way as well. But for a runner, this creates abdominal stability when you're doing a single arm, because now you have to balance with a moving weight, trying to pull you off the bench. So it creates core stability while working your chest and shoulder muscles. So those are the 3 pushing movements I'm going to cover today. Chest and shoulders are very important because they keep your upper body moving in a straight line. I don't know if you've ever watched an endurance event, but towards the end, the runners are kind of running like this. And they're getting a whole lot of movement up here because their muscles just aren't able to hold the skeletal structure any longer. So instead of being efficient, running like this, the way you should be, they're running like this very inefficiently, a lot of movement. It actually creates a need for more oxygen. So now you're in an oxygen deficit, and the muscles just aren't performing as well as they should be. So that's the push. Next, we're going to go into a pull. And we're trying to keep these movements pretty simple today, stuff you could normally just do with dumbbells. So the first pulling movement I'm going to show you, it's called a 3-point row. So all you need is something to lean on. You don't need a bench, you can use a box, a chair, whatever. It's called a 3-point row because you have 3 points of contact. Your back leg, your front leg, and your hand on the elevated surface. So the front leg is going to match the hand. The back leg is going to be back there so that your moving hand, your moving arm will be able to have full range of motion without interference. The dumbbell is going to hang directly below the shoulder, and then the elbow is going to drive towards the ceiling, and the dumbbell comes back towards the hip. So that's the motion right there. Keeping that elbow tight to the body. And that's a 3-point row. Next up, we're going to go into a renegade row. This is much more advanced because it involves the same rowing motion from plank position. So from this position, one at a time, you'll alternate picking the dumbbells up. You'll notice my hips stay flat. This creates a lot of stability through the pelvis when you're doing this correctly. If you find yourself twisting, that's bad. You want to widen your base, widen your feet, get a narrower base in front with the dumbbells. Concentrate on squeezing those abs tight and controlling that rotation. And then finally, we're going to go back over here. We're going to do what's called a gorilla shrug. Gorilla shrug is identical to the 3-point row, except you don't bend that elbow. You just pull through your shoulder blade. It's also known as scapular retraction. The reason we work back as runners is we need to be able to pull our scapula back and down and maintain this position for good posture. Good posture, we open our lungs up, allows us to breathe better. Again, if you watch those longer races at the end, the runners are not running upright, they're running more down like this. They're crushing those lungs, they can't get the oxygen in, and it just makes them inefficient and basically slow. So that's all I have for the first 2 exercises. Dara's going to come in and talk about lunges and squats.
Hello, everybody. So like Chris said, I'm going to get into our lunging movements with the lower body, and then Daryl will get into hinging with the lower body. So start off here, we're just going to do some regular squats. Of course, all of our lower body muscles are important for running. That's your main movers there, and you want to be able to push off the ground, keep your coordination, all of that is important for running. So first up with squats, you want your feet about hip width apart, maybe a little bit wider if that's more comfortable for you. Keeping your body weight through the heels of your feet, sinking down, bending from the knees, pushing the glutes back like you're sitting into a chair. So again, starting with body weight, and then if you want to move up on this movement, you could grab a dumbbell or a kettlebell or a couple of textbooks, holding it right here in the chest, sinking down in your squat there, adding a little bit more resistance with the dumbbell. To take that movement then to the next level, you can add it in some explosives. taking it to a jump squat to give you a little bit more endurance training there. And then I want to move into some single leg actions here with our lunge. So I want you to start with just one leg in front of the other, sinking down into a stationary lunge. So the back heel stays lifted. We sink down with the hips, nice straight line from your head all the way through that knee, and then pressing up through the heel of this front foot, toes of the back foot, sinking down, pressing up. So staying here in this nice stationary lunge. Feel comfortable in that movement. Maybe add a couple dumbbells through there before moving into the moving of the lunge. So your moving options for your lunge: reverse lunge, stepping back, sinking down, coming back together, or you can step forward, big step forward, sinking down, coming back together. So then you're adding in those pushes, propelling yourself forward and backward, just like you're doing when you're running or pushing off the ground to move through the run. And then your third lunge, we're going to take it to a lateral lunge to move in a different plane of motion. So stepping wide, we can start again stationary, both toes forward. We're just in a wider stance than we were with a squat. One side at a time. You can alternate. You can do one side, add the dumbbells in to frame the knee and press through that way. And then you can take that up a notch by adding the step, sinking down and pressing back to center. So those are some of your basic first level movements. And then you want to take it into then your single leg movements. When you're running, you're spending a lot of the time on one leg at a time as you're running. So taking those into maybe a single leg squat, you have a bench or a chair, one heel on the ground, but most of your body weight in that pushing leg, sitting back, just like we did with our squat. Tap the bench or chair and press all the way back up. So starting with your little kickstand leg, sinking down, pressing up. Once you're feeling comfortable there, maybe lifting the heel, full body weight in that single leg. And once you're really comfortable, taking away the bench, single leg, all the way down, all the way up with no help. So those are a few of our pushing movements you can do for the lower body, really focusing on the quads there. Daryl is going to take it into our hinging movement, which is going to be more the hamstrings and glutes. So here you come.
All right, how's it going, guys? I'm Coach Daryl. So I have the hinging portion. So basically, efficient movement, quality of hinging is very important in running because it allows you proper high shin angles and also anterior pelvic tilt forward. So basically, your whole posterior chain when running is very important for your glutes, your hamstrings, as well as your hips. So by honing on into a hinge exercise, you're really strengthening this back side of your muscles, which is important for running. So the two exercises, well, kind of 2.5 exercises I'm gonna demonstrate first. The first one is gonna be a glute bridge, which starts off by laying down on your back. What we're trying to do is lay down on your back here, knees bent. From here, the goal is to squeeze your glutes up tight. You want to try to get a tight squeeze, like you're squeezing a grape or walnut or whatnot. And you want to try to get a straight line from behind your knee all the way down to your glutes to right here to your back. You don't want to lift or tilt your head or anything like that. You want to keep your head just nice and relaxed on the ground. And you want to squeeze those glutes and you relax down and up. Make sure you squeeze that core nice and tight as well to help with the glutes. And you repeat the process roughly 10 to 15 times, about 2 to 3 sets. And that's just kind of the first beginning exercise to start with hinging to kind of help you get that the motion down of bringing those hips back. The second one we're going to do, so you have 2 different kinds of deadlifts. The first is going to be an RDL or Romanian deadlift, which is also called as a stiff leg deadlift. So what we're going to do with the stiff leg deadlift is You find the wall. I'm gonna use this as my wall right here so you can see from the side. I'm gonna use this as a wall. And what we're gonna do here is get about a couple inches away from the wall, feet shoulder width apart. And from here, I want you to kind of just push your hips back as far as you can, trying to touch the wall. As soon as you touch that wall, bring those hips back up. And you'll repeat the process by taking a couple steps forward each time, a few inches, hinging those hips back, trying to touch the wall with your glutes, coming back up again, and then continue the process, a few more inches. And the goal is to try to get about a foot away. That way you can still be in contact with the wall, and you get a nice good hinge, touch the wall. You see my back is flat right here as well, which is a key component to doing a proper hinge, which I left out my other two. Thank you. So, the first part of a good deadlift is hinging at the hips, making sure you get a good hinge. The second part is not to round your back. You see how my back was in a neutral spine position from from my glutes to my head. It was in a neutral position, similar to what Chris said earlier. When doing, you want to that scapular retraction. You want those scapulars to be strong. You want to bring that arm back. Similar thing with a deadlift is you want to retract those shoulders, those scapulars as well. Keep that chest high and tall, just like in running. And what you'll do, if you have a broomstick or something like that, you can screw at the house, or if you have a stick, you want to place one hand right above your glute, one hand right behind your head. And same thing, you want to stand up tall, hinge back. Once you have the hinging portion down, then you want to work on if you're wrapping your shoulders or not. So the idea to this is trying to keep the stick touching your back and the lower back and your upper back as well. And if it's only touching your upper back, then you kind of know you're rounding your shoulders. If the stick comes off your lower back, then you know you're rounding your shoulders. If you can keep it in that neutral spine position where it's in contact the whole time, that's the idea, that's the goal. So right there, hinging, perfect position there. And then our last one I'm gonna demonstrate for you is going to be just a regular conventional deadlift. Similar to exactly just like the stiff-legged deadlift, except you're gonna have a slight knee bend. So you start with a slight knee bend, kind of similar to the squat position like Dara was explaining, except your back still gonna be in that neutral position. Make sure eyes forward or slightly down, neutral spine position. The higher you have your dumbbells, you don't have to bend out to be able to pick them up if you have them on the stands or if you have weighted barbell, perfectly fine. You'll lift up out of position, hinge down, shoulders retracted, neutral spine, down and up, right there. Perfect. All right, so done with the hinging portion. Hope you learned something. Next, I'll be handing it back over to Caitlin. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yes, you're stuck with me. I am back. All right, so last thing we're gonna do, we're gonna do some very simple rotations. And actually I'm gonna start out with an anti-rotation because, well, it's just one of my favorites. So, all right, so everybody knows what a plank is. So the plank, unfortunately, is not a great exercise. It's a great thing to learn, but the plank is a position that you exercise from. So once we start adding movement to a plank, that's when it becomes extremely effective. And if you think about when you're running, your upper body should be in a plank and you have arms and legs moving around it in chaos, well, your torso is remaining completely in control and stationary. So the plank is excellent. I'm not ragging on the plank at all. It's just don't consider it exercise. It's a position you exercise from. So I'm gonna get into a plank, and then all I'm gonna do to create an exercise out of this is I'm gonna raise one arm and one leg at the same time. They're gonna be opposite side, and then stabilize and hold this position. Now I've created an extreme condition for my body. So you hold this position, it's called a bird dog plank, and then you switch to the other side, make sure you get both. And you're gonna set this up on a timer. So you can start out, the first time you're doing it, actually just try to switch back and forth and get used to balancing in the position. Then you can set it for like 15 seconds on each side, go 30 seconds on each side. And by that point in time, you're probably going to be pretty stable. You can additionally add weights if you want to have more of a challenge. Obviously, 3 pounds is not a huge challenge, but for demonstration purposes. All right, so that's the bird dog plank. You're going to be working your core throughout all these exercises anyway. This is a great way to finish off and just really smoke it. All right, so the other one is an actual rotation. Let me get up here so you can make sure you see all of me. Okay, this is called rock the baby. It's very similar to a Russian twist. I don't like Russian twists because people add weight to them and they end up rotating through the lumbar spine, which is very dangerous. You need to concentrate on rotating your shoulders, stabilize your spine and your pelvis. Your pelvis is, planted to the ground when you're doing this. So that's not going to rotate anyway, but make sure your lumbar spine, your midsection, your belly area all stays basically flat. Pretend you're holding a baby and just turn your shoulders to the left and the right. Again, this is something you're going to put on a timer. Start out about 30 seconds every time you're doing it. Go up to a minute, whatever. You can actually rotate from this to an anti-rotation back to this. Bird dogs, rock the baby, back and forth. That would be torturous on your midsection, but that will really, really add some stability there. And we need that stability while we're running. But that's going to wrap it up. Don't want to keep you too long. Like I said, these are pretty basic exercises we covered because you don't need to get fancy. So hopefully, if you don't have equipment at home, obviously you can go to any gym and do all this. But even starting out, you should have stuff lying around the house where you can at least get the movements down and get used to them before you do actually have the chance to start adding weight. All right, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. Like I said, if you have any questions whatsoever, get with your run coach. All sites have a run coach. Check out the YouTube channel. Dara put that in the chat box, so go ahead and get that link before we sign off here. Stay tuned. We will be advertising on Instagram our next webinar. I'll be shooting out emails like I always do. And that's pretty much it. So again, thank you and have a wonderful day.